Mr. Eli Aaron, please. Mr. Aaron, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. SmartTrack is not a new transit line. In the spring of 2014, the province announced it would be electrifying a number of GO lines. All GO transit lines originate in Toronto, so the city was already going to benefit from Regional Express Rail, or RER. As part of RER, Metrolinx announced it would identify opportunities for new stations. What Toronto has managed to do over the past 2 years is volunteer to pay for GO Transit expansion the province was already going to give us for free. For those of us who don't know, GO Transit stands for Government of Ontario Transit. Toronto is still recovering from the province's termination of TTC operating funds 2 decades ago. Toronto has $30 billion of backlog capital projects. So how does it make sense for us to give the province $288 million as a gift for them to improve infrastructure that's their jurisdiction? According to this report, the city will be on the hook for over $800 million to build new stations in GO corridors owned by Metrolinx, identified in Metrolinx's study of Government of Ontario-owned rail corridors. We would be giving the provinces our resources that are in short supply and high demand so they can improve their infrastructure. It is also important to note that the province receives much more of every tax dollar than the city. I still do not understand why this redundant service that would cost billions abruptly ends at Mount Dennis and does not serve priority neighborhoods farther along the rail line, such as Weston and others in North Etobicoke. Is it just because the original plan had a line on a map that made a 90-degree turn at Eglinton? If so, I don't see that as a valid reason. On the Eglinton West LRT, there's also the massive assumption that Mississauga will come to the table with, depending on what the GTAA gives, about $500 million. According to Mississauga's 2015 capital budget plan, this is more than the municipality intends to spend on public transit over the next decade. The 10-year capital plan is $416 million without SmartTrack. Our plan would require Mississauga to increase their capital budget for transit by over 110%. In the report, it just says that Mississauga is expected to come to the table with the money, but I didn't see anything in there about any negotiations that happened with Mississauga or anyone asking Mississauga about this. I wasn't in there. There's a bigger question. Why are we focusing on the projects that politicians want to build instead of the projects we need to build to keep our city moving? Andy Byford, the CEO of the TTC, said the relief line should be Toronto's top priority. Our chief planner, Jennifer Keesmaat, has described it as critical to the transit system. The mayor has said it's not an either-or with SmartTrack or the relief line. If this is the case, then why are all 3 levels of government earmarking billions for the redundant GO service called SmartTrack and not a penny for the relief line to actually be constructed? It's not because it's still in the detailed design phase, like some have suggested. So is every project in this report today. Not one of them is shovel-ready for tomorrow. It is very possible to dedicate money to a project that will be shovel-ready in a few short years. The issue is that there is no political will to build the most important transit project for the city and the region. Finally, as many have suggested, tax increment financing, the initial funding scheme proposed, is not enough to fund the entire portion of the city's cost, and the report is recommending a 2% municipal tax hike. This is in addition to the 30-year tax hike we will now be paying for the unjustified Scarborough subway, but I won't get into those details now. I support building transit and raising money to pay for it. We should be spending our transit dollars as wisely as possible, not on deals that have us paying hundreds of millions of dollars for provincial expenses. And I just want to end by basically saying we have so many important transit priorities. The province was going to expand RER. The province said they were going to do this before the SmartTrack studies even happened. If we finally have this money, we have all these different projects that need to be done. Why are we going to the province and saying to them, here, we'll help you pay for your projects when we have our own projects and we're struggling to get them to the table to help us? And they've cut us off from TTC funding. I actually spoke to the minister last week to ask him what was going to happen with all these new projects, the operating funding. He said he has no plans to help us out. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Aaron. Any questions of the deputant? All right, well, thank you very much for being here today.